Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much again for joining us on a Saturday. I hope your day has been going great so far. Looking forward to a really exciting panel. We have some great guests today who are ready and willing to answer all of your questions. My name, again, is Abbey Berryman. I do sit on the board of directors for Adcraft. It's actually my second stint on the board because it's so much fun. And I also work at NBCUniversal, and my office is here in Detroit. I'm responsible for client partnerships within the automotive category, the insurance category, and the travel category. So I do quite a bit of travel across the country too, but I've been a part of the Detroit advertising community for, I hate to say it, but 25 years. So this community has been super important to me in my development over time. So excited that you all have joined us, and hopefully this will be the first part of your journey over many, many years in this community. So I think what we'll do, I think the title of this was Ask Me Anything. So we're gonna start out. I would love to have all of our panelists introduce themselves first and just give us a little bit of background, where you went to school. I forgot to say I went to Michigan State. What did you major in? Did you have an internship that was related to advertising? And how did you find your way to your current position? So there's a lot of questions, but I think if you just give us a little bit of background on yourselves, that would be great. And I see Paul at the top of my screen, so if you want to start, that would be awesome.
Hi, I'm Paul Murray. I'm the Director of Media at DP Plus. We're a mid-sized agency in Farmington Hills, Michigan. Most notable among our clients is Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. We work on a host of other clients. I came out of Michigan Tech and Wayne State Business School. I'm going to call Abby a rookie because I'm coming up on my 40th year of doing this. So I'm proof that even though this is called a young person's game, that you can have a long, successful career. I've got a business degree, and my diploma says specialization in advertising and PR, although I wouldn't know a darn thing about PR. I did not do an internship. There were not a lot of internships when I came out of school. I got into school, and I think this goes to a theme that you may have heard today, is I got my job through a connection. I saw that an agency was looking for people in their PR department, and I called my prof at Wayne State, and I asked him if he knew anything about that. And he said, no, sorry, he didn't. And 3 weeks later, I got a call from J. Walter Thompson asking me if I could come in to interview. Interviewed the next day, didn't have a resume ready, raced downtown, had my sister type it up. So I've been plugging along for a very, very long time at this. That's what I'll say.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Dan, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Abby. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dan Ngoyi. I'm our Vice President of Talent Acquisition at Rock Central and Rocket Mortgage. And so just to maybe add some clarity into, everyone I think heard from Casey today, but Rocket Mortgages and Rock Companies are really a people-first organization that's dedicated to leveraging technology to just help people through life's most complex situations financially and help make that as easy as possible. We're also part of a broader portfolio, which is the Rock family of companies. So as you think about companies like maybe Pop House from an interior design standpoint, or Bedrock as well, I have the pleasure of leading talent strategy, execution, and hiring folks for those organizations. A little bit about me. I'm a Detroit native, born and raised here in the city. I'm in the heart of downtown Detroit right now, here in my home office. And I actually, shout out to you, Paul, also went to Wayne State University and majored in business administration. So this is a Wayne State Warrior panel, which I appreciate. I also did not have an illustrious internship. I actually cut my teeth as a supervisor at the Mort Harris Recreation and Fitness Center. So I worked full-time there year-round, and it actually gave me some insights into leadership and some things that I think helped get me to where I am today. And then after graduation, I jumped into a career in outside sales. It was awesome for me because I learned how to take no. I learned the importance of relationships and connections, which I'm happy to go and talk a little bit more about today. And also got my role at Quicken Loans at the time through a friend who was a mortgage banker doing sales there, and said, you'd be awesome at sales. I said, maybe, but I'd love to do HR. And 8 years later, here I am leading the best talent acquisition team in the world. So really, really excited to be here today. Really excited to talk about my journey and talk to folks that are looking to transition careers or really, really grow a career in this space, and talk about how we can help from an HR lens.
Thank you so much. I'm just going around like the Brady Bunch boxes. So Joy, you're next on my screen.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me as well. My name is Joy Patrick, and I am an HR lead at MRM, which is a part of McCann World Group agencies here in Detroit as well. We're actually located in Birmingham. And I also went to Michigan State, go Green. I know there's a lot of stingers out there. I did undergrad and grad school at Michigan State. So I have an undergrad in psychology and graduated in December. I won't give you the year. I'm sure I'm way older than most of our audience. But graduated in December, I went straight to grad school in January. Something I would not recommend, but stayed on campus for a really long time at Michigan State and moved back home to Detroit also from Detroit. I live in the city. I still live in the city now. I actually live in a home that I grew up in here. And after Michigan State grad school, I got a degree in HR and industrial a degree there too. And I couldn't find a job. So I really thought that getting a master's degree, I would automatically find a job. I did intern a few times as well. I interned at GM and at GMAC, their Human Resources Center in downtown Detroit, and was very surprised that with the internships and all the experience and the things that I had done along the way, didn't lead me, didn't give me as much of a competitive advantage as I wanted. So I went and worked for my then boyfriend, now husband's family. So they ran school management. So I did some, HR related tasks there, if you will, while I was looking for a role. And that worked out really well for me. I think doing that and having the opportunity to not have that traditional path allowed me to gain some real usable skills, right? And after a couple of years, I thought, hey, you know what? I really need a real job. I don't know what I thought a real job was. So then I found Digitas, which is a digital agency based in Boston, but an office here in Detroit, and started working there as a recruiting coordinator. So, and that was, probably over 13 years ago, 12 years ago. So really, really loved that place. I was there for 10 years, a little over 10 years, and left Digitas. Was in recruiting for a while, but really loved HR. So that's where most of my experience was. But I've always, been drawn to recruiting. So I've always had a recruiting function. I've always had a diversity inclusion function. And I do that now at MRM. So really happy to be doing that kind of work. It's what I love to do, always work with students and always, strive to connect with students no matter what the job was. So glad to be here, and I'm really excited to talk about this kind of stuff.
Great. Thank you so much. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, hence my background, that we want to thank MRM for being the sponsor of this panel. So thank you so much. Chioke, if you want to go next, that'd be great.
Hi, my name is Chioke McRae. I work at Leo Burnett. I'm an associate director in strategy. And my background, I'm also a Wayne State grad, so go Warriors. I guess I'm on the other side. Like I had all the amazing internships. It has been a wonderful ride for me. I interned at Leo Burnett, Campbell Ewald, BBDO, Disney World. My professional career started off a donor, and I left donor and went to GTB. And then I left advertising for like 6.5 years and ran my own business, working with startups, restaurants, the institutes, so like the Charles A. Wright. And after doing that for 6.5 years, I wanted something different. I missed being around people in an agency. It's like some of my partners were in LA, some were in New York, some were here, but it wasn't like that atmosphere that you get working inside a corporate environment. And for me, that was something that I missed and I cherished. But it's like now I'm in a role that I've only been in my new role for like 73 days. And I can honestly say it's the best job I've ever had, like outside of interning at Disney World. And that's just different. But Yeah, I over my journey, like I networked like crazy when I was in college. Like I met Joy when I was in college. So for me, it's just been a lot of networking and being completely focused on this career. Like I knew I was going to go into advertising as a kid. My mom said I used to sit in front of the TV and watch Wendy's and Burger King's commercials. And then we would go out to dinner or whatever. They would take me to Wendy's or Burger King and I wouldn't eat the food. They was like, but you sit in front of the TV and watch the commercials. And what they realized is that I was just enamored by the commercials, the activity that was going on. So that is how I'm here today.
Well, that's great. I'm just going to give a little more context because I feel like what's really interesting about talking to all of you is that we all didn't necessarily know what the path was going to be, and we kind of, by happy circumstance, ended up where we were today. And I think that's a good lesson for anyone coming out of college. You don't have to feel like, and my daughter's a senior in high school, and I tell her this all the time, you're not going to know what your job's going to be in 5 years. It's just, I'm a planner and I love to know those things, but it's having that open mind. So for example, I went to Michigan State like a lot of other advertising majors and people that are in advertising, but I actually was in the business school and my major was accounting. And I got out of school, I did an internship at Ford Credit actually, and I was repossessing cars. And I'm like, I don't think this is what I signed up for. So I just by chance through friends found out about media, and I worked at an agency for over 20 years and loved it, and worked specifically on GM for most of those years. So I think just be super open-minded, because as evident by all of the backgrounds here, there you could do pretty much anything, and you grow and you learn as you go about different opportunities, or you create opportunities too. So I'd love it if everyone could maybe just give a little bit more background on what you do on a day-to-day basis. I feel like that would be great context for everyone, and anyone can start first.
I'll go first since I started first before. So, this is an HR panel, but you got a media director. I figure out where the ads run, like Abbey, like Abbey did for many, many years. It's using research to guide us. What's the most appropriate placement to reach the person most likely to buy a product, buy a service, whatever it might be. It is a skill that has changed dramatically, probably in the past, I'll say 13 years. Once we got smartphones, everything changed in terms of what we do. It's a lot of math, but it's also a lot of art.
I'll go next. So I will say that I think my post-pandemic day-to-day is way different than it was probably before now, just because there are a lot of things that have just changed the landscape of the way that we're working and what we do now. So, but in thinking of that, traditionally it's really about connecting with employees and talking with employees about things that they would need. And that could be from, just having general career coaching, career pathing kind of conversations. That could be them trying to manage a problem or manage up to managers. It really could be about almost anything. And it's really about guiding and listening, right? And also talking a lot with managers. So I have the opportunity to work with a lot of great senior leaders, and really, helping them manage their business, just trying to be a business driver on the HR side and use that function as a key tool to helping our business leaders, make sure that our business is successful. So it could look like, staffing discussions, that kind of thing. And in my junior career, I would say, it didn't differ much, right? It might have been a bit more transactional or learning the function, which is always helpful in really doing some of the nitty gritty work. But I still do that now, right? I think a lot of us will find that no matter how far we go in our careers, there's always a baseline and always, a level of accountability when it comes to what some people might call entry level work, right? I will continue to do that kind of stuff and continue. I will fill in at the reception desk, which I do often, right? I might manage that team, but when everybody's on PTO, there are times where I will simply sit there and cover the desk. So it could be all up, down, and around. In HR, that's kind of the job, is that you do whatever comes your way, but really helping people, figure out how to be their best self. That's, I would say, the biggest part of what I do every day.
Great.
Yeah, and I'll go afterwards and kind of touch on what Joy said too. So I think probably all of us on this panel are like part-time professional firefighters, and we probably run around at some point in our day with our heads on fire trying to figure things out. But I'd say really from a talent acquisition lens, my focus on a day-to-day is to focus on talent, strategy and execution for our organization. And I look at that from two sides of our business. I think one side is with our internal business partners. So I have the pleasure of working with awesome leaders like Casey. I have great leaders like Leanne Balicki, who leads talent brand for our organization, and really thinking strategically about their needs, what they're looking for, and how we can go to market with a message that's not only authentic, but represents getting the best talent for their organizations and their teams. And to what Joy mentioned earlier, some of that in the past may have been perceived as transactional. But as a leader in HR, we want to make sure that we're coming to the table and we're providing value, and we're really partnering to do what's best to drive the business outcomes and the business as a whole forward. The other side of that coin is a side that I really enjoy, and I think what kind of got me into HR and recruiting to begin with, which is spending time not only developing and working with our recruiters, but spending time also talking to candidates. And I'm always shocked. Sometimes I wake up and pinch myself that I get paid to help people get better and help people find opportunity. But I get to talk to amazing candidates, understand what they're passionate about, and see if we can find an intersection between their passions and what we do here at Rocket Companies and our organization as a whole.
Great.
Next, I will go in my current role. What I do, it's a lot of research. It is so like right now, I'm researching video games and entertainment, trying to understand where opportunities exist there for our clients. So I work on Buick GMC and the new Hummer EV. So it's like my day-to-day is I have my first meetings are at 9:30 and 10 o'clock, and those are just like status meetings. Then after that, I may have a meeting on Hummer. I may have it on Buick. I may have it on our influencer campaign that we're doing with LeBron James. Or it may just be like yesterday, I had my early meetings, which I don't have to go to every day, but I try to attend them just to understand what is going on the business. And most of the people in those meetings are your account people and your project managers. I'm generally like the only strategist on those meetings. But for me, I just want to understand the entire business since I'm new in this role. But it's like the rest of the day, it is a lot of hopping on Twitter, looking at what trends are happening on, reading articles and advertising publications, but also reading stuff in the New York Times, the Free Press, like any place where I can get understanding of what consumers are doing. And when I say consumers, I'm talking about you students and everyone on this panel. So just understanding like what behaviors are happening, like Joy talking about, like the roles has been changed during this pandemic. Like one of the reasons I came back to advertising, I said I want to be in office around people. I have not been in the office yet. So it's like the complete opposite, but it's like human behavior has changed because of the pandemic. So like some things I try to understand is like, okay, what behavior is going to change from a shopping standpoint, or how are they operating online? So a lot of my day-to-day is really just a lot of research. Probably like 2 or 3 meetings a day, but really just researching, searching the web and understanding what is going on in the world.
Great. Thank you so much. I think, so I'm guessing a lot of people wanted to attend the HR panel to get some good advice on how to break through as a candidate. And we talked, a couple of you mentioned the pandemic, and I know for sure my day-to-day has changed a ton as I just sit in front of my computer instead of being out with clients all the time. So could you give any advice to people that are have already graduated, who are in the job hunt or who will be looking for jobs soon, on, I guess, a couple things? Number one, how do you network in this non-traditional, we don't know how long this is going to last, and any advice on breaking through as a candidate when you can't, do things in person, and any tips for online or places to go and look for opportunities?
Yeah, maybe I'll start here, and I promise I won't suck all the air out of the room on this one, but I'm really passionate about this because this is the reality and this is the world that we live in today. And it's interesting because we've seen the talent market completely shift, because now it's going from a localized market to a national and global market because everyone has access to everyone everywhere. One of the beauties of that, though, is that this thing called the internet that we're all using right now, and the opportunity, there's so much information available, not only about the organizations, but about people you could potentially work with. And, you know, my mom used to always tell me that a closed mouth doesn't get fed. And so even today, I'm on LinkedIn nonstop. That's probably the first app. I wake up, I like kiss my wife, then I check LinkedIn, then I go to like Facebook and all the other things. But like leveraging LinkedIn and reaching out to folks and introducing yourself and sharing your passions, I think is really important. And I think people get discouraged very often because maybe you don't get the response right away, or maybe you don't hear anything. You have to be persistent. And that is, in my opinion, what I've seen personally, you know, one of the many great ways that people can reach out and really kind of set themselves apart as a candidate in this global crazy world that we live in, I'll call it.
I completely agree with that. I think even now, you know, being here is like, you know, I would even say a great step, right? So attending fairs, a lot of things have moved, you know, to obviously just online, but there's still an opportunity to interact. So if you've gone to, you know, virtual fairs, they're now trying to figure out different ways for you to have that human element, that almost that human touch factor, and being visible in those spaces. So, and that looks like a lot of different things, right? That's from raising your hand and asking questions, putting questions in the chat, you know, making sure that you connect with speakers and panelists after you, you know, attend that session, connect with them online, ask them questions, share your resume proactively. And like Dan was saying, you may not always get a response. And I would say majority of the time you probably would not get a response, but that doesn't mean that person didn't absorb that information or save your resume somewhere or pass it along to someone, because that is exactly what happens. You know, so I would encourage people to continue to do that no matter what feedback you get back, because it might be discouraging to not get what you need back from people. But, you know, a person like Dan who leads, you know, this function at a very large agency, if all 34 of you sent him your, not recommending that necessarily, but if all 34 of you sent him your resume right now, there's no way for that one person to respond to you. So don't expect that, but expect that he will take that, pass it along to his team, that he will, you know, recommend it in a space that he feels, you know, might be relevant for you, you know, so you have to kind of trust the process in that way. So think how to get through virtually. I would say that for sure. Use LinkedIn if you're not, you know, on LinkedIn right now. That is the only place where most recruiters live, right? There are other places, but 99.9% of recruiters right now use LinkedIn to recruit. So there isn't really another space like it. So you have to have a presence there if you want a job. And even in college and you don't have a job yet, there are ways to, you know, make yourself look attractive to employers, and also network on LinkedIn, right? All the groups, everything is social now. So all the groups that you ever wanted to be a part of before are accessible, even more accessible to you now. And they have chats and they have, you know, posts and things that you can interact with, as well as Facebook pages and things like that. Think of programs that you can be a part of. You know, I work a lot in the diversity space, so, you know, that's my element, but I think of programs like the 4A's Mate Multicultural Internship Program, but they, you know, they're programs that really have a sense of community and ways for you to connect with others that can also be your advocate and also be coaches in certain ways. So think, you know, about spaces that exist like that, that are, you know, accessible to you, and even those that may not be, right? Like we are now in a space where you can go and be anywhere within, you know, a click of a button. So, and employers are hiring that in that way. You know, I hired a lot of freelancers at the end of last year to wrap up some work, and they were all over the country, right? And entry level, you know, some of them were students, and they were students that we met along the way in virtual career fairs, right? So I would say that don't think of this time as being limited. It's only limited based on your outlook and the amount of work that you want to put into it.
So I'll pop in to say, you know, I'm on this panel. I'm not an HR professional, and hopefully I'm not going to say anything that contradicts or violates the sort of thing that Dan or Joy would say is legal. I'm not going to. But I'm a hiring manager. We are filling a position right now. We're close to extending an offer, so please don't flood my inbox with resumes. I went through over 150 applications. The last time we had an opening at this time last year, we had a hard time getting 5 applications. So I have sifted and sorted through them. I would tell you, my opinion is, if it says you need to have a college degree, please don't apply until you have a college degree, because frankly, it wastes time. I know you may have profs encouraging you to do that. Our HR professionals may tell you different than that. But as a hiring manager, that just makes my job tougher, because I can't hold the job open until April, or I had one that was not going to graduate until next year in May. So I applaud the initiative, but I'm going to tell you what you've heard before. It's use every contact you have. If you've got a friend whose father is in the business, or you know somebody, don't be afraid to ask them if they can get you a contact. I'd ask Joy and Dan, what % of positions are filled by standard applications versus somebody having a contact or somebody having an in? And then the other, go ahead.
I just said agreed. Yep.
Then the other thing is, if you don't belong to your school's ad club, you should definitely join the ad club. Ad clubs tour agencies. You could be in an agency and ask a question, and that's going to get you noticed. You make that contact. It makes it a lot easier when you send somebody the LinkedIn request. And then if you haven't, you probably should join the Adcraft club. I believe it costs, is it $10?
Because they came today and registered. So I think they should be good there.
Okay, I didn't know if that had changed. So but as far as asking people for help, the worst answer you can hear is no, thank you, I can't. There's no downside to asking, so ask.
Yeah, and I'll chime in really quickly, Paul, because I appreciate you sharing the 2 things. And Chioke, I do not want to steal thunder at all. Number one, just really quickly, authentic relationships matter, and I think it's important to not be transactional. And 2, if you apply, if you don't have your degree, feel free to reach out to me. Still, not to steal your thunder, I'm happy to connect, because as we think about this concept of learning agility and being able to show that you have learning agility, that's critically important. So I understand your pains, Paul. I'm with you. That's what I hear all the time. But we'll take it, and as a team, we'll figure something out.
I'd say for me, so I'll give you the people listening today one tip. So when I'm at AdCon, when it was in person, I would never give recruiters my resume on the day of AdCon. One, I wanted to get information on how to craft my resume for each particular company that was sitting up there. I knew that their inbox was going to get flooded between today and Monday. So I would wait for an entire week to send my resume, and I would always get replies back. So it's like, I didn't want to be a part of those 300 students who were sending in their resumes. It's like, how do I differentiate myself from everyone else? It's like, I'm going to, wasn't even doing research, because I had already done all my research on it. It was like, I know how their inbox is going to be Monday morning, and I don't want to be part of that crowd. So the 27 of you in here, my recommendation is like to wait a week, or just when other students are not bombarding everyone's mailbox. Also, don't be I always ask for informational interviews at every agency in town. That was my way of going to Wayne State. I had a hard time. So I ran our ad club. I had a hard time getting all of the agencies to come to Wayne State. And I was like, they were at Michigan State, U of M, Western. I was like, so how can I compete? So it's I started doing informational interviews. And that got me in the room where there was no pressure on anyone, because they weren't obligated to give me a job or a real interview. But it's I could show myself. I could show my passion for the business. I would always ask for tours around the agency. So this gave me an opportunity to see the culture inside the shops. And obviously you can't tour places right now, but it's I always just try to think of what was everyone else doing. I'm going to do the opposite. So it's if you're at Western or if you're at State, and I would say particularly if you're at State, you have the greatest advertising network in the state of Michigan. You should utilize, you definitely should join your ad clubs. But also when you're on LinkedIn or if you're on Twitter, so Twitter has been a great place for me of building connections locally and out of state. But it's if you're on LinkedIn, when you're sending messages, introduce yourself. Don't just add me. My philosophy is I will add students even if they don't send me a personalized message. But once you're in your professional career, if there's no personalized message, and I don't see a benefit, I won't add you. But it's like, so it's like when you're reaching out to the recruiters, like even if you didn't hear them on the panel, but it's like, do research on it. Like, hey, I see you like whatever, and I'm really interested in working for your company. I share this story. There was a recruiter at Team Detroit with GTB now. And I was at our advertising competition, at a national student advertising competition. And I really wanted to work at Team Detroit. And this recruiter ended up adding me on Facebook. I didn't add her. So she added me, we connected. And I remember her posting this question about my niece or nephew is biting me and biting everything in the house, and what is going on. And I was like, oh, I know what is going on. This baby is just getting teeth in their mouth. And I was able to reply to her because, like, I have a nephew who is actually in another room. He's a freshman at Michigan State. I remember him doing that as a baby. He would bite everything when he got teeth in his mouth. So I replied back to her, told her, like, you don't have to worry. Your baby is not a monster. They just figure out that they had teeth in their mouth. So that took my relationship from a HR student standpoint to a real relationship. So this person works at Dell now, and they still reach out to me sometimes with opportunities. It's like I built a real relationship. So it's like I always try to build real relationships with people. Like when I interned at Leo Burnett in Chicago, I looked at my package a few years ago that I sent. It had typos everywhere. Like, but I had built such great relationships with people that they overlooked those typos. Like I remember the day of creating this application. I was sitting in a coffee shop. I was sick. I was rushing to get to FedEx. I mailed it. My professor happened to be, he was like the PhD student of one of the leaders at Leo Burnett. So it's like this full cycle of, okay, Chioke has typos in his resume, but I trust this person. I trust him because he's built a relationship with me over the last 4 years that I even though these typos are here, I can trust them. So it's like for me, I've always tried to build real relationships with people that go outside of the career path. So it's like my advice to you is like whatever relationship that you're trying to build, make it a real one and not just here's my resume. I want to get a job at your company. There's one you have no idea where that person is going to go in your future. And I guess I would bring it back to Leo Burnett. I went to a career fair in Chicago, and the recruiter was working at a company that was some company I had never heard of. No one was going to her table. Everyone was going to all the big agency tables. I walked over there, shook that person's hand, talked to them for like 5 minutes, got back in the line of the big agency. And then when I got the call from Leo Burnett, the recruiter was like, hey, don't I know you? I was like, yeah, we actually talked a few months ago. So it's like he had left that tiny company and he had gone over to Leo Burnett. So it literally, I had this other end where it's like, hey, I'm going to recommend you for this internship. And the funny part about it, Casey, who is the CMO of Quicken, my boss in Chicago is best friends with him and was good friends with someone else at BBDO because he was at BBDO at the time. So it was like this full circle of building real relationships has allowed me to get into so many doors without having to go through the pains that many people go through in advertising.
Great. Thank you so much. So I want to tell everybody, I see your questions in the chat and there's great ones in there. We definitely are going to get to them. There's one more important question that coming from me that I want to talk to the panel about before we dive into those. I think this year's been awful in so many ways. I think one, if you want to, I always just try to find what are the positive spins. And one I think is a renewed or new, depending on the organization, emphasis on diversity, equity, inclusion with everything that happened, beginning with George Floyd's death. I was really proud to find out what NBCUniversal had already historically been doing in terms of making sure that we had fair representation in front of and behind the cameras at our organization, and they've continued to invest and are putting $25 million to ensure in communities, et cetera, diversity. And I want to talk to everybody here in just a quick way, if you can give me kind of some of the highlights on what you're proud of your organization is doing in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Joy, I'll let you go first. So then
low-hanging fruit there, Dan. I will say there's probably two sides to that, for me. I think one is you know, as a personal side, but also the organization, right? So at MRM, I think it's, you know, we are 10 years old, right? That's kind of infancy for some of the big agencies that are out there, but we're part of a really large network. So we have the opportunity to have, you know, just a lot of folks who've done this work for a really long time. But MRM, you know, I think started really on their journey of building a real strategy around the time that I started in 2017. So I've gotten, you know, a lot of history with them and building that. And so I think one thing we've done really well is to start from the bottom, right? Is to build a sense of community and a kind of a acumen around diversity internally with our own people before we go out and try to implement or influence the world in any kind of way. That is, and we are still in that piece, I think, in that that level of building and strategy is really working on ourselves, because it's extremely hard to attract diverse talent or to think of you know, influencing the world when we have not necessarily focused internally on how to make ourselves better and, you know, in a real concerted way. So that's something that we're doing right now. And that looks like training, you know, your very traditional baseline kind of stuff. But that also looks like, you know, taking a hard look at data, taking a hard look at our numbers and our metrics and finding the gaps. That's actually my day-to-day job and responsibility, is looking at where is it that we can influence behavior, and only focusing on behavioral shifts and changes, right? So not checking a box, not just attending a training, but really figuring out how we change minds and hearts of people that work with us, and doing a lot of soul searching and work in that direction, and using the tools that we currently have with our network to our advantage. We have really looked outside of our agency as well to say, what are the things that we think are really true to us, and how we can impact the world around us. And students, working with students is, you know, key for us, and building that entry level talent there. But we also know that you can't really influence the leadership or the decision-making process of an agency unless you actually have diverse leaders. So a lot of our time is spent there training and developing our internal staff to become leaders, and also looking outside and figuring out how we become attractive to, you know, diverse people, because you have to make sure that you're I would say acquiring folks who are living and breathing the same ethos that you are, right? And want to build in the way that you want to build. So a lot of my work is in that space. And there's so many things going on. I can't even, you know, think of a way to summarize it, but I would say it's about developing folks. It's about listening to people and getting an understanding of what they need internally, and also looking outside in the marketplace and figuring out how we become attractive to people and building that pipeline and networking. We do a lot of networking, informational networking, right? Proactive, reaching out and making sure that our leaders connect to other people that don't look like them, right? So because you will never change the landscape at the top if you don't expand your network. So that is a big part of what we are doing day to day, and not trying to boil the ocean, right? You know, I think it's disingenuous when you do so many things that now we're not sure what you stand for. So I think that's a big part of our strategy right now, and it's good work. You know, I enjoy doing it. It's what I've always done. I'll never not do that. I'm a Black woman, so I will always be an advocate in that space. So I take it with me wherever I go, and I came to this job. That's, you know, that's what I brought with me. If you want me to come, this is what I'm doing. You know, regardless of what job I have, you know. I will always be doing that kind of work. So I find it to be rewarding, but I also think it's something that we all have to do, right? I don't think it's something that, you know, we can't, you know, be in that space even before last year, right? It's something we should always have top of mind in the work that we do. So I'll leave that there because I could go on and on about that. But in general, that's kind of the stuff that we're doing. Yeah.
Coming straight from one of the experts. So thank you.
Of course.
Maybe I'll just actually, does anyone else have any great examples before I move into the chat?
Well, yeah, I'll say you asked, oops, go ahead, Dan.
No, after you, please.
So, yeah, our organization has always struggled recruiting people of color. We have made major strides over the last 5 years. And you know, I would say I'm really pleased. We just filled one of the most important roles in the agency with an African-American woman named Bryn Phillips, who joined us as our director of strategy. So the voice is there. It has been 2 months, and it's just, there's things that she has brought forward that frankly, we just were not thinking of. So that's been great for us.
Great. That's great. Thank you. Dan?
I'll be as quick as I can and as concise.
No, it's okay.
I think the thing I'm most proud of is that we took a definitive stand as an organization. So our CEO, Jay Farner, released an op-ed about where we stand as an organization. And I think it was really a rallying cry for a company that's been working on it. We've had opportunities in pockets, but it really helped us bring together not only the belief system, but the strategy to drive that work forward. So from there, our Chief Diversity Officer, Trina Scott, our Chief Learning Officer, Kamar Riol, and hundreds of team members have been really engaged in making this work real. And one of the things that we talk about a lot as an organization is the concept of weaving DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion into our DNA. And we also talk about real sustainable action. So we don't want to do the shiny objects or the performative things that just feel really good in the moment, but then people forget about it when the fad is over. And so what we did is we rolled out a 6-point strategic plan that really allowed us to leverage what we're strong at and what we know we do well as an organization to impact our internal communities and the communities around us. And in our 6-point plan, just very quickly, we are focused on recruiting, team member engagement, leadership development, government affairs, law enforcement engagement, and then communication both internally and externally. And really being able to take, you know, the work that can feel so expansive and it can feel like the ocean, to Joy's point, in boiling it down to key things that we know as an organization that we can control and we can impact, and then measuring it and working through that over time, I think has really put us on a great path, and that continues to evolve. And the excitement as an organization is just the same as, if not more now than it was 6-7 months ago after, you know, things with George Floyd. So it's something I'm really proud of and makes me proud to be a part of this family of companies.
I would also say it's pretty authentic coming from rock companies too, just given all the impact that you already have had in the community, et cetera. So that's awesome. Chioke, did you want to add anything before we?
I guess for me, like one, there's 2 things. One, my GM client has, like General Motors in general, has made that they want to be the leader in this area. And I have my direct GMC and Buick client who is putting pressure on all of his partners and the agencies that this is something that they are focusing on, and it is something that the agencies have to focus on. And I mean, also, like from the leadership of the holding company of Leo Burnett, they have put a big emphasis on these have to be like part of your goals for the year. So like you have to do something from a D&I standpoint. So it isn't just, this is just going to rest on HR to figure out, no, this is part of everyone's objective for the year. And I would say from my standpoint, it is, I've heard a lot of these things before. So I was like, I'm excited to see people finally feel being pushed to do it. But time would tell is how I look at it.
Great. Perfect. I also will give one little plug too. We do have a dedicated committee within Adcraft that is focused on DEI, and anyone who is on this panel or on, as a participant, we always love input and participation. So please let us know if that's something you'd love to be a part of. Okay, so I'm going to hit the questions. We might have to do speed round because it looks like we have probably 10 minutes left. So the first one comes from Max Wicklund. He is from not Michigan State. I'm so sorry. Western Michigan. It's just because I went there. How have you navigated the journey of staying true to your own values while you pursue your career in advertising? Have you ever had to compromise to achieve business objectives?
Good question. I'll answer that. So business objectives for me look a little different than they might for Paul or for Chioke. But I'll say that I think everybody probably has found themselves compromising at some point, something, at some point in their career. But how you bring yourself to the table is figure out first who you are, who you want to be, and how you represent yourself. I think that we definitely probably have work versions of ourselves and then family, friend versions of ourselves. And that just boils down to personality. But I will say that the core of who we are, we should always figure out how we bring our authentic selves to work and how that shows up for us. And I think it's really about your value system and trying to align your value system with the place that you want to work. I think that's really important. So I think you'll find that if you're able to do that, that it's easier for you to be authentic at work. And I would never suggest that someone compromise their value system or compromise who they are when they show up to work for a paycheck. Now, that is really difficult to say as someone who has a career, but when you're building career, I think that's also equally important, because if you don't do that, you'll find yourself a bit unhappy in the space if you don't try to align those things. It may not always be perfect, so be okay with that as well. If you land somewhere and you realize like, oh, this is definitely not my space, still feel free to take that as an opportunity to learn while you also search for a place that you feel fits you from a value system standpoint. So that would be how I describe that, the answer to that question.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to give the next one to Chioke, because you mentioned that you research this every day as part or something like this every day. Question comes from Abigail Macchiarolo. Hopefully I said that right. Also from Western. How do you think office life will change once the pandemic is over?
How will it change? I think it will be a mixture of working from home and working in the office. It could be 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. I think from a student standpoint, it will also give students the opportunity to get in front of leadership more. Because I know, just talking to some of my colleagues, they are perfectly fine staying at home forever, if possible. And a lot of these people are people who have kids. So it's like they've been in their career X amount of years. They don't need the networking at this standpoint because they've built so many relationships. So I think it will create opportunities for students to like really get in front of leadership and get opportunities that you may not have had before. And also, like as Dan was saying, like the opportunities to work wherever. It's like I have my copywriters on my team are in California. So it's like really the opportunity to, you're not forced to be in the location that you're in right now. So it's like, if you want to go work in LA or New York, you can find opportunities where you can still live in the Metro Detroit area, save money, and then move to those cities in the future.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm just gonna give a shout out to Sierra Hull because she had a great question, but I feel like we've kind of addressed it. It was in relationship to maintaining connections within the network. So thank you for submitting that. Dan, I have one from Brandon Crawford. Hoping that you can help with this one. It should be quick. When is the best time for seniors graduating in May to turn on the I'm open for work feature on LinkedIn?
ASAP, when they're 5 years old. No, and also the sooner the better, because I think that's just another flag that indicates, hey, I'd like to talk to a recruiter. And I think part of what happens in that conversation is being really clear about, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Recruiter, I'm a senior. I don't graduate until May. Here are the things that I'm interested in. This isn't a transaction. You may not have a job right now, but I'd love to build a relationship, understand what you do, create a network where we can ask questions so that when the time comes, it's not me reaching out cold to you saying, can you hire me? You now, like Chioke had mentioned earlier, have an established relationship that you can leverage. So my encouragement, and this may not be what everybody does, is I'd say the sooner the better, open it up and then leverage that and be thoughtful and intentional about the relationships you create there.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna let anyone answer this one. What are some red flags? And this is from Alessandra Infante. From Eastern. What are some red flags that you find in resumes?
I'll just use one word: typos is what I will say. And I know Chioke shared a story about how he got a job without typos. So relationships can help there, but typos always eat at me. I understand it, but just...
Yes.
Okay.
I'll say, can I say something?
Of course.
Abby, like you know, media guy, right? You're not a media guy. Use that generically.
It's okay.
When you see a resume that's when you're applying for a position in media and the resume talks about, even though objective statements are old fashioned, about to secure a position in account management, that's a red flag to me. I'm not going to hire somebody who says they want to be in account management or whatever to be. And that goes back to a point I think that, I don't know if it's Chioke or Dan made about, you don't have one resume, you have multiple resumes. Customize your resume for whatever it is you're applying for.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I'd also say a red flag could be overinflating your resume. And as a student, I know that you want to look attractive to employers, but I would definitely not recommend overstating or embellishing what you have done or what, you know, just because someone says that they need you to have X skills doesn't mean that you automatically go and try to inflate that on your resume. Try to be true about the skill set that you have, because that will bite you in the butt for sure in the end. And there are ways to highlight more of you and the things that you've done, even if it was just working at Forever 21 or whatever the things are. But I would definitely not, overinflate your skill set or misrepresent yourself on a resume.
That, Joy, that is so true. The resumes that have the sliding bar, it says expertise, and the bar is over to the far right on every single area. It's like, I've done this for a long time, and my bars would not be to the far right on every single area. So you're 100% correct about overinflation.
I'm going to throw out one more resume question because there's a lot of resume questions flooding in. From Elena Seberg, would a recruiter prefer to see a creative resume with tasteful color and formatting, or a very traditional classic resume? I've heard preferences for both. Curious what is preferred.
Yeah, I can share my 2 cents. I think, you dress for the party that you're going to. So, you don't want to show up to a house party with a 3-piece suit and a tuxedo unless you hang out with people that have house parties with 3-piece suits and tuxedos. But I think it depends. And it's all about, what do you know about the organization? What do you know about the recruiter? What do you know about what they're looking for? And then act accordingly. I think, with a creative role, a creative resume likely makes sense. But if you're applying for a role that, dictates that you're going to be very, detail oriented and punctual, that may or may not be a turn off for the hiring managers and the interviewers that you're working with.
I agree with that. And also add that, think through the aesthetics of it and whether or not it plays well in that space. So if you do have a very creative, resume, like with your pictures and lots of graphics and all the bells and whistles, also have a different version, also have a played down version, a more concise, general version of your resume so that you can easily pivot in that direction. But I think the content is key, right? You don't want to have a super busy resume. You don't want to have a resume with, a ton of information. And at this stage, it only needs to be a page, because trust me, there isn't enough, right? And if in your, 21, 22 years of living, that you need to have more than a page. And there are some people who might disagree with that, but I definitely think right now, I have a 1-page resume, so it's like, figure out how you get that information into a page, but also have maybe different versions of that, and always customize it based on the audience, and have that information that they need, at the top, or make it, more visible to them. But I would definitely say, if you have a super busy, fun one, have, a different version of that too.
I guess what I would add, like, since you're students right now, so you're not going to have, you shouldn't have a busy resume. I would say make your resume where it's intriguing, where it's something where the person wants to talk to you because they want to ask you a question about something you put on your resume. Like on my resume, I used to have, honestly, I still have it on there. I have at the very end under interest that I'm interested in NASCAR. People are always intrigued by that because it's like, Black people like NASCAR. I was like, I love NASCAR. And I also have on there that I love watching the community of international soccer people because they're just so intriguing. Like there was this Puma campaign many years ago, and they asked the husbands, who do you love more, your soccer team or your wife? And a lot of people thought they were going to pick their soccer team. They ended up picking their wife, but it was like, I also thought they were going to pick their soccer team too, because there's like two different styles of love. So it's like, I always try to put something on there where I remember one recruiter flat out telling me, he's like, Chioke, the only reason I really brought you in, he's like, you have a good resume. He's like, but I was just so intrigued by this question down here. And I don't even remember what the question was because I rotated what I put at the end of my resume. But I always try to do it where I'm going to stand out, because like you're in college, most of your resumes are all going to look the same. You're going to have your internships or your customer service like jobs. And also, if you have customer service jobs, don't be afraid of putting on there. If you work at Wendy's or McDonald's, I would tell you this, like me, I've worked at a restaurant before, and I used to have restaurant clients. Like what you learn from a customer service standpoint has helped me so much in my professional career, just understanding the personalities of people. But yeah, just like I always say, have fun with your resume. Don't overthink it. Eliminate the typos. But it's like, make it where people are intrigued, where it's like, I have to interview this person because I want to know more about them.
Great.
I have to add something. I'm sorry, Abby. It's what Chioke said about if you worked in a restaurant, if you worked in a grunt job, I love seeing that, because that's the signal to me that you are going to do anything. And frankly, at an entry-level job, you might be asked to do anything. So don't be afraid of that. The other one I'll add that we didn't talk about, but I'd ask Joy and Dan to address, does a college graduate need to include where they went to high school on their resume?
I'll answer. I don't care where you went to high school. I mean, like, if you're proud, shout out. I believe in school pride, but candidly don't care.
Yeah, it's not important. It's not important.
I will add this, that it's not important, but if you know someone, like you have places here in Detroit, so you have like Country Day and Cranbrook. Like if you know someone in that office went there, I say add it.
Let's not forget Cass Tech though, because we go
That's
deep
Cass
now.
Tech too.
We go
Yeah.
deep.
I was waiting for that.
The CEO of Walgreens. So yes, but it's like these places who are like take a lot of pride in where they go. Like if you know someone is going that went there, read that on your resume, like I would say include it. But if you just went to like Ferndale High or something, like I would say like no, like if like you have to know your audience. That I guess that's the best thing. Like,
That's
know
good.
your audience.
It's sound advice.
Well, thank you everyone so much. I don't want to get in trouble and I want to send you off to your next panel, but thank you for joining. Please, you know, like we said, hit us up on LinkedIn. We'll be looking for you, and good luck to everybody. And thanks to the panelists.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks
great
for hosting
day.
us. You
Bye
too.
all.
Nice meeting you guys.
Bye.